Welcome back to Homeland Security. This week we are talking about the intelligence process, specifically as it applies to Homeland Security. Now, the United States has a vast and complicated intelligence enterprise, and we're really focusing strictly on the aspects of it that play into Homeland Security. So counterterrorism, counterproliferation, those types of missions. We're not going to be discussing this week anything about traditional espionage or intelligence gathering operations. We're just focused on stuff that's pertinent to this class. So again, this is only going to cover the highlights of the slides. You do need to know all the material in the slide deck. However, I want to emphasize some things. There's fairly early on in the slides, there's a graphic that shows all of the U.S. intelligence enterprise. The top level is the U.S. intelligence community. The gold level there is other federal agencies like DEA, Department of Justice, Treasury, things like that. Green level is your DOD, your Department of Defense entities, which has, DOD's got its own large intelligence community, including the Defense Intelligence Agency, combatant command, so each individual combatant command, which is a regional area of the world, has an intelligence branch. And then at the bottom level, the purple level, is that state and local law enforcement agencies. And that is, that's kind of a new addition to what we call this whole intelligence enterprise. Okay, so we've got the four levels, which comprises literally dozens, if not hundreds, of individual agencies and organizations. The top level is where I want you to spend most of your time thinking about. That's the U.S. intelligence community. And those are the agencies that answer directly to the relatively newly created Director of National Intelligence, or DNI. So there's 16 agencies in there. They're listed on a slide. You're going to need to know what those are and the fact that they're part of the U.S. intelligence community. Okay, real quick, I want to talk about the Central Intelligence Agency. It was created in 1947. There's a slide on that in there which you're going to need to be familiar with. The important thing to remember is, from its creation in 47 until 9/11, the CIA was focused almost entirely on what we would call traditional intelligence operations. It was focused on the Soviet Union in the Cold War, China, our traditional geopolitical enemies and possibly allies. But that was the CIA mission. It really had to restructure and rethink post 9/11 to kind of retool and refocus on the counterterrorism aspects of its mission. Now, it had considered that to some extent before 9/11. However, post 9/11, that became really its driving purpose for existence. Okay. I think we've talked in these videos before about the changes that the FBI went through post 9/11. So we're not going to rehash all of that. I want to have you pay attention to that there's a definition in the slides of Homeland Security Intelligence, which states that it's focused on assisting local, national, international counterterrorism efforts, specifically to detect and interdict attacks aimed at the United States or its interests. It's that detect and interdict that has really changed since 9/11. Whereas before, terrorism was treated strictly as a federal crime or a local or a state crime, and perpetrators were caught, apprehended, and prosecuted, we're now focused entirely on that interdiction level, on breaking up an attack before it can be successful. And this is it seems like a small change, but it is a critical change in focus. It affects how all of these agencies and organizations go about doing their job, and the importance of that really can't be understated. All right. So we've got this huge intelligence enterprise feeding us all kinds of information day in and day out. The easy assumption is we have all this information, and that leads us to make good decisions about Homeland Security. And that is actually not always true. While good information will lead to or can lead to good decisions, it's not a guarantee. You're not always going to make good decisions because you have good information. Other factors can come into play. Now, without good information, it's very difficult to make good decisions, outside of being just lucky. So it's important to understand that relationship. Good intelligence allows good decisions, but doesn't guarantee it, all right? So Homeland Security Intelligence is focused completely on what we call the asymmetrical threat. Since 9/11, it's become exceedingly clear that the main threats to this nation are small, non-state actors like Al-Qaeda and those that follow its credo, that don't project the typical or traditional geopolitical power that our foes in the past have. So it's very asymmetrical. They're small and they strike our weak areas to inflict maximum damage. And in order for an asymmetrical threat to be successful, for it to actually be a threat or a hazard to the nation, it depends upon secrecy. And this is where our intelligence efforts are trying hard to break that up. This is what leads to those actions that allow us to interdict attacks. By breaking down the secrecy, which is really the only protection that an asymmetric threat has against us. They cannot stand toe-to-toe militarily or technologically. Really, secrecy, hiding in the shadows, is their only defense, and intelligence is the only way that we have as a nation, as a superpower, to break that up. So that right there should kind of illustrate how important intelligence is to the Homeland Security enterprise. All right, last point for this video, and it's something that we've talked about at the beginning already. It's that purple layer at the bottom of that stack at the front of the slide deck. It's that state and local law enforcement aspect of intelligence. That's something that's relatively new in the past decade, and it reflects the reality that state and locals have much more contact in the community and therefore have more information to feed into our overall intelligence picture than we've ever really allowed in the past. Traditionally, state law enforcement and local law enforcement have been consumers of intelligence information. As information became known, particularly about narcotics or organized crime, things like that, that information would be funneled down to the state level and then to the local level, and they would consume it. They would use that information in their local and regional policing. However, they were never contributing back into the national intelligence picture. And that's something that we have tried very hard to change in the past 10 years through techniques such as fusion centers, joint terrorism task forces, and efforts like that to really engage the locals and bring the information that they can provide into the national picture. Now, you know, in a town like Tallahassee, that may not necessarily have a huge impact. I'm not saying there's a lot going on in rural Florida that would really change the intelligence picture, the counter-terrorism intelligence picture for the United States. However, if you look at areas like Los Angeles or New York or other major cities, they certainly have information that can be of value to us, and we're now trying to use that more.